So I think we have the film sensitivity to shoot this today as a few years ago, and the size to have done this, Yanis. But for me, I wanted to play so much with the focus on this that in the end, to be right on the border of how much in and out of focus you go, I wanted to have a clear view. And on a car, I couldn't. I could only have one operator looking through a camera. I couldn't. The other two would be unmanned. That level of control, I think, to me, could only happen through a proper HD kind of live view. I really embrace new technology and digital work, but there's something that I love about shooting on film. And after Locke, that Locke was my first digital film, by the way, and then I went on to a film that was only shot on film. And the previous one had a bit of a mix. So Jack Ryan is where I started kind of trying out what I could do in cars with a red camera. And I do find it ultimately easier with that format. And maybe I think I could have, by doing it in camera that way, so easily kind of viewed in camera that you have. I think that's the big thing for me with digital capture, is actually showing what you're doing so clearly. You don't have to do that thing of, I promise you, Governor, it's going to be a lot brighter than this tomorrow morning. The subtleties of how dark you can go, however much you may appreciate it or understand it as a cinematographer, are not that clearly transmitted to the director. In this case, I could go quite dark and show that there was still detail there, and avoid a panic, and create an environment where people felt safe to talk about how far we go, how daring we could be. And that is something I value from digital capture. More than the size and that, which is again, it's a process, and it's a mentality, and doesn't really have so much to do with technology. And 26 minutes.
I just want to ask you something quite straightforward, which is, because you said that you had 3 cameras when you were doing the dialogue, and obviously you had the auto cue and everything, so there must have been a lot of shadows if you were using any of the available light. Was the available light from the motorways completely blocked? Like you had absolute control on the light on Tom's face?
Quite the opposite. Everything. I kind of I asked for a sunroof so I could get even more stuff on his face. There were shadows sometimes, but actually we had tested it with a low loader previously, and found that they're quite high up. There actually aren't that many shadows. They're in the right places.
The low loader was a very important element.
I think this could not have been done without a low loader, and that's really probably the most expensive thing we had, because this was such a cheap film to make. The most expensive item of equipment was definitely the truck and the low loader.
And just based on that, can I ask something else? Did you actually create any rigs, any fun rigs, like with Panalax and the team there, that were used? Like, did you create anything new for that, or you just use what was available?
Well, no, Panalax for a couple of years have been working on a mobile LED system with flexi strip for me, for things like for car shoots. So we've never really used it that much, but it was in the works, and it's really basic stuff. There's nothing that you'd ever sell or rent to anyone else. It's just we sat there and looked at flexi strip that didn't have green in it, a lot of Tupperware because it's waterproof and allows light to go through. This was really made with Tupperware, Velcro, flexi strip, and a laptop, really.
Thank you.
In what extent did you identify yourself as a director of photography with the hero that, in the way he handles his business, you know, in his absence, we see how the way he works. Did you identify yourself in this story as a professional?
That's a good question, a hard question. I think he's an admirable man, and I think there's something, it has to do with work and personal life, in that whole idea of honesty. We all make mistakes, but we should be able to be honest about things. I find that, to me, what I love the most about Ivan Locke. He's almost... it's weird. We're predominantly Greek in this audience. In our culture of Christianity, there is one character that's very interesting. It's the good thief. And I think to some extent, what I loved about the screenplay was the idea of someone kind of flawed but honest. And that I loved very much about the screenplay.
One last question, I think there is over there. Nigel, I'm sorry.
It's very interesting, your discussion about the character, because although Tom is not a Welshman, I am a Welshman, and there is a lot in the Welsh character which I can see in the... This is my second viewing of the film, and there's this terrible conflict in your soul between good and evil, because you're brought up in a very strange, non-conformist environment. My question, however, to you is this, that in one line in the film says, look, effing, learn. And we've come here to look and effing learn, and we've learned a lot from what you've said. In your experience making the film, what did you learn?
I actually, when I made this film, I felt very liberated. It was in between two studio pictures, and I thought it was very hard to find great scripts and things that touch you, and that you'd want to make and be supportive of and proud of. And this was the cheapest, smallest film I've ever made, and the one I'm most proud of. And I think if you want to be a real cinematographer, you must love telling stories about the human condition, and that you don't care at all about your budgets or your salary, and that you make something that is both content and form are combined in a certain way that makes compelling cinema. And that's what I learned from this, to always stay true to that.
Before we have the last question, I would like to say that there is a small, ένα μικρό διάλειμμα θα γίνει τώρα και θα ξεκινήσουμε πάλι στις 2 η ώρα ακριβώς με τον Φέδωνα Παπαμάικλ που θα παρουσιάσει με τη σειρά του. Μπορείς να μεταφέρεις το μικρόφωνο.
Hello. Exposure-wise, you push the camera far. Do you show any flaws on grain or things like that? I mean, digital noise and stuff like that before the grading?
Most of it was shot at 800 ASA, the standard setting on the red. Only a few shots went to 1280 ASA, and they were shots that went through a lot of glass. A lot of the 2 layers of glass and a mirror, especially the rear view mirror, is usually it's ND'd. It's got it's darkened. But no, that's the red at its standard setting. It wasn't pushed.
You didn't work with the new mount, the motion mount. You work with the previous one, right?
No, I didn't use a motion mount.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what a motion mount is.
Anyway,
maybe
okay.
it could have been useful.
Do you feel some grain would benefit the film?
I like grain, but I think to add it artificially afterwards, I think you just have to be, again, you just have to be truthful to the form. That would be a post-production process, and I just wouldn't be interested in that.
Another question is about the teleprompter. I know it's a director's kind of thing, but do you show on Hardy's acting a difference with the teleprompter and without?
Well, he did everything with a teleprompter,
oh,
so
okay. All right, sorry.
That's all you have.
All right, okay.
I'll come back to sodium lighting and its color interpretation. Back in the film times, I believe we could get easier this orange-ish color that we see by naked eye. Now with electronic cameras, there are a few shifts, either usually towards yellow, sometimes towards red, and I would. But on the other hand, we have we have excellent tools for color grading, so we can get into this and change it, shape it. There's always in my mind a way to interpret color and some thought before getting into the grading room. So I'd like to ask you, why did you choose getting into this rather yellowish instead of totally naturalistic tint?
The yellow was in the sodium lights that we chose to drive on. So I really didn't. If I was going to allow the color to come through that was naturally in the environment, I had to, and if I wanted to enhance lighting, I felt I should enhance it in that color. I did have a neutral color light on the car, and sometimes I faded that up as well, just when I thought it was too much orange.
So you mean that by naked eye it would look as yellow as we saw it today?
Pretty much,
okay.
Yes. That particular highway.
Okay.
What's interesting is if you do drive on, you go for 10 miles on a highway and it can actually change. And I think that it's been ingrained in our heads, I think, this kind of color, either the orange sodium or the cyan mercury vapor. And weirdly, because of LEDs, it is all going to disappear. America, in about 2 years, you will not see sodium vapor highways, for example. It will be a very clear, kind of cool, white, greenish, and that will be what future generations will associate with a highway. But at this time, that's what we had in, on the A406 around London.
Okay, thank you.